Welcome to the February 2nd, 2022 special meeting with the Board of Directors. We've got a linkage this evening with the MIEA, the Educational Association, and the Schools Foundation later on. And with that, the agenda has been established, as published. And I think everybody's in person. Maggie Tai is online, and we'll start out with, so welcome. We love our teachers and custodians and bus drivers and all the folks who represent Sally. So we're really glad to have you guys here. We do this, I think, once a year, right? And so with that, I will start out with introductions, and then we can dive into our topics. So first, I'm the current president. This is my 8th year on the board, David D'Souza, and I've had 3 kids go through our district, and all very successful in college now. So.
Dan Glowitz, 2nd year on the board, vice president, 2 kids, a 7th grader and a 5th grader.
Deborah Lurie, 5th year on the board. I'm the ledge rep this year, and I have an 11th grader who many of you have seen along the way.
I'm Tam Din. I have 3 boys, one in Northwood, one in middle school, and one in high school.
I'm Andrew Houston. I'm the senior school board rep. This is my 2nd year, and I've had a couple of you as my teachers.
I'm Asha Warner. I'm the junior student school board rep, and it's my 1st year on the board.
And Maggie Tai.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Maggie Tai Tucker, and this is my 3rd year on the board, and I have 2 graduates now and a 4th grader at Island Park. And I'm sorry that I'm not there in person, but I am feeling sick, so I might actually turn my camera off, but I promise you I'm listening. We have the flu in my house and it's just nasty.
First year superintendent.
And then let's
My name is Lori Talinsky. I've been in the school district for 23 years. I have a 6th and an 8th grader at IMS, and I teach 2nd grade at IMS. Trina Sherman, I've been with the district 20 years, and I teach 2nd grade at Northwood.
Andy Hamp, I've been in the district for about 18 years. We have 2 daughters that graduated to Mercer Island, and I'm at Island Park.
I'm Claire Kirkbach. I'm at West Mercer, and this is my 8th year. I teach music.
I'm Sally Lozier. I'm the current Mercer Island Education Association president. I also am currently teaching some learning support at Island Park. I've been in the district for 11 years and spent almost 20 in Seattle prior to that. Oh, and I have 3 graduates from Mercer Island system.
I'm Michelle Hayes, and I'm a teacher at the high school. I teach math at the high school, and I've been in the district for 23 years now. And I've got 2 kids not in the district that are currently in high school at Mount Si. So
I'm Jessica Olson. I teach 2nd grade, which it's funny, I guess I never looked together. I mean, 2nd grade teachers. I teach down at Linkage, and this is my 6th year teaching here on Mercer Island.
I'm Alice Larkin.
It's the 18th year, I'm not positive. I teach not math, but 6th grade language arts and drama.
And I'm Kate Meyer. I work at IMS. This is my 6th year, and I teach all kinds of things, but mostly language arts and social studies.
thank you, Erin and Matt.
Oh, I'm Erin Battersby. I'm the executive director of compliance, legal affairs, and human resources.
Matt Sullivan, the relatively new executive director of finance and operations.
Do you have anyone online?
Anyone else?
So we need to, okay, perfect.
Everybody else has been introduced other than Andrew.
Andrew, you-
I've been here for the district. I'm in my 12th year.
Michelle.
Michelle Miller, I'm president of Fred and support.
Ian Henry, your communications coordinator, about a year and a few months, class of 91.
That's awesome. Okay.
And in the audience, we have Susan Ham. She's on leave at the moment, but she teaches music. She'll be teaching music next year. Yes. And I don't know how long it's going to work. That's 21 years. Yeah.
Well, welcome. We are doing this as a dialogue, so I think we've got a list of topics of interest. But we can follow the list, but if you have any discussion you want to have with the board, this is a great time to do this. We're not taking action at this point or not taking votes. It's an opportunity for dialogue and have some candid discussions as you wish.
I have an opening statement I'd just like to make that comes from our members, if
Sure.
that's okay, and then if we can move into a dialogue based on some questions that we have, and I'm sure you also have questions, that would be fantastic.
Very good, thank you, Sally, that works.
Okay, so this year, we who are mostly the executive board for Mercer Island Education Association are coming to this linkage session first with an acknowledgement of the improvements in our district leadership and climate that Dr. Rundle has brought as superintendent. Of particular note to our members is the increased transparency, management of finances, and communication. And Matt, we see you back there, and we appreciate you coming to our district. Our MIEA members appreciate the strides that have been made since our last linkage session. Last year, we asked the board in what specific ways you would improve the communication between the board and the community stakeholders. Members have noticed the board is more readily responding to our community. Members have noticed the board is more readily, responding to our community, our students, and the member questions, and has been willing to meet with people and discuss pertinent issues. Members have also commented that receiving school board meeting announcements from Michelle has been extremely helpful. So thank you, Michelle. In MIEA, we are proud of our professions, our work, and our students. Every day we engage, educate, counsel, nurse, guide, entertain, care, mentor, enlighten, support, drive, clean up, maintain, challenge, communicate, and enrich the lives of our students. We take our work seriously, and we conduct ourselves professionally, often going above and beyond what our contracts require us to do. I have been asked to convey to you that MIEA members are highly concerned about the tone of board member comments this year. When we hear board members questioning the quality of our certifications, endorsements, and professionality, it is disheartening and counterproductive to our district. How can you as a board expect to build confidence in our district if you as the board do not show you have confidence in us and the work that we do every day with our MISD students? How does the antagonistic tone of board member interactions with MISD employee presenters and each other build confidence in our district? How does it help to attract and retain educators or students? As the MIEA president and an MISD employee, parent, aunt, and Mercer Island community member, I ask these questions in hopes that you will consider the effect that you as a board member have on the success or failure of our district to thrive in a very difficult time. As a board member, you are a public figure. Our MIEA members ask that you consider who is watching you when you are in school board meetings and the impression you are leaving on them. We believe that Mercer Island students are receiving high quality instruction from well-qualified educators, terrific transportation from our bus drivers, clean schools thanks to our custodians, quality care from our nurses, our counselors, our OT/PTs, psychologists, para-educators, secretaries, and all our Mercer Island School District employees. If you are not sure about that, you need to come into our schools and places of work and participate in what we do to make this an outstanding school district. That being said, our MIEA Executive Board is here today to have a conversation with you in regards to the agenda items. It is our hope that the following questions will help guide the conversation so our members can get a general feeling for what our school board members are considering, assuming, and planning when looking forward toward the rest of this school year and the ones to come. We thank you for bringing us to this forum to have this conversation.
Welcome. Thank you very much thank you very much, Sally. I appreciate it. Would you like to get started with any questions you have first? Oh, it's actually first, any comments from the school board members or students? Yeah.
I would. I think that as a district and a community, one of the things, particularly in today's day and age, we need to have is the courage to have challenging conversations and to assume best intentions and not to use perhaps difficult conversations and avoid it because it makes people uncomfortable, whether that's with respect to history, to budget finance, or to review of how we compare against other districts. I think it's what the community demands. And I think as professionals, we should be able to have candid conversations. I look forward to our discussions tonight.
This question that I asked, I want you to know that as a community member, I am living and working through this question. So I ask it honestly and truly, because I'm grappling with it myself. So during this time of inflation, what recommendations will you provide to the superintendent to reconcile 3 competing goals? Increase fundings coming in, decrease money going out, and achieve your goal to bring the reserve balance to around 8%.
So I'll take the first one. I think as you are well attuned to, this board has been very outspoken about the need to maintain regionalization, which directly impacts finances in a more profound way than any other aspect that's up for debate this legislative session, and for the first time in 4 years post-McCleary. So in terms of on the revenue side, I think you've seen a very active board, perhaps the most active of any district that would be impacted, which directly affects finances on the revenue side more than any other factor up for discussion.
So I had the amazing opportunity to be in DC this past week with school board directors nationwide. And then to advocate with our federal legislators on the things that we thought were important. The 2 issues that we focused on were special education funding and school meals for all students. And it really was empowering to come together. It's going to be a tough Congress, but we're asking for the federal government to fully fund their commitment, and under the law of IDEA, they're supposed to be funding 40% of our special education budget. Right now, we're getting about 11%. And they've never, I think the highest we've ever had is 18. Realistically, do we see a change in that right now? Probably not, but we're hoping that we can, start some of this and learning to reframe it. So I think that those, there's a lot of boards, around the state and around the country that are advocating for the same things. It benefits us all. It benefits our special education students, our gen ed students, and obviously our staff, who is most important to work alongside all of them. So those are the things that I think that we need to continue to do, is hold our elected officials accountable. We have, a tiny bit of control over how that money is spent and how much we're able to bring in. But I know that from my testifying in both the state and federal, that the most powerful voices are from our students and from the people who work with them every day. So I would encourage you all, like I've taken this commitment myself, to follow the bills that are especially happening in the state. There are lots of things that are impacting our schools and funding, and make your voices heard and give them specific stories of how it's impacted you, your personal life, and our students' lives, because I don't think anyone should have to choose between living a comfortable life and serving our kids. So that's something that we all can do. I think every member of our community and should be doing. In terms of decreasing money going out, we have to right size our schools, and it's awful. I've been part of these things too, both personally and professionally. But when we're funded based on kid, we have to spend based on kid. It's just that simple. And then in terms, I think focusing on reserves comes straight from that is, you know, when we have our staff right sized, when you're 85% of our budget, then our reserves will come a long way. I'm very comfortable with the decision that we made in COVID and coming out of it to spend that rainy day fund, because if not then what? But you know, it's we have to tighten our belts and make sacrifices now as a result of it. So it's time to do that now too. Inflation, it's just hitting at a really bad time and we're all feeling it. And I struggle with it too.
So just adding a little bit more, I feel like Dan says that this board, and especially I think with Deborah and Dan, been doing a lot of good work in working with the legislature to find different ways to increase our funding. And in addition to what Deborah was saying, since the summer, our staff has been kind of forced to really do a deep dive into our budget to see where we can cut excess. And then, you know, continuing to the good work that's being done today. So I feel like, as you mentioned earlier, really confident in, at least we have more of a bigger and more in-depth picture of where our budget is. On the fund balance, you know, part of me is more of a bigger strategy in that how do we use our fund balance? It's really where do we want both, not just the board, but I think with the whole district that includes like the community, you know, the parents and also our educators and staff, where do we see ourselves going in the future? And so for me, how I approach as an individual board member is the fund balance is really to help us to provide us that you know, if we value our faculty or staff and educators and thinking that things, yes, we have to tighten the belt, but then it's also a balance of kind of the future direction that we're going to. And so having this conversation, I think put us basically kind of check each other, kind of like, hey, what are you thinking? And kind of like what we're thinking, and hopefully come to that middle ground, right? But I don't have like, we need to be at 3%. We strive to. But then sometimes I feel like we hurt ourselves kind of short term if we, you know, we make short term decision and not thinking long term. But I lean on the community and also folks like yourself to kind of give us that feedback. But I think as a whole, like you mentioned, it has we've been kind of operating at a status quo, and we haven't questioned a lot. And COVID has forced us to be a lot more intentional. And really to look at our, you know, bank accounts and I know in my private conversation with Fred, and actually I think in public, it's also been kind of how do we reimagine kind of our budget structure? If we continue to operate the way we've always operated, you know, cutting things doesn't make sense to me. And I've always, you know, you've seen like when we talk about budget cut, it's not just at a certain areas, but I think we have to right size the whole system, you know, both from the top of the administration down to, you know, the direct service. But I think we should talk more strategies. Where do we want to go to, and how are we best in the best structural and financial situation to meet our strategic goals to serve our students? And I don't feel like maybe we're starting to get there, right, Fred? A lot of those conversations, more so than before, and that's what I'm excited about.
And I would add to that, I think that what we're facing, as well as other districts in the region and nationally, is a demographic shift, right? I mean, this isn't a surprise. I think like the rapidity with which like the peak was reached in school enrollment, and then the decline that was perhaps precipitated by the pandemic, again, both locally and nationally, perhaps accelerated trends that were already there. For the first time in a generation, it seems that there is a consensus, if one reads any news report, that it's going to be long-term sustained enrollment decline. Bellevue predicts that its district will be 20% less in 10 years than where it is now. And if you look at trends over time, like generally like generations are not, I mean, 10 years is probably going to be a longer sustained decline. And so the question is, right, how do we start having a conversation of what is the sensical, practical and right way to proceed and not shy away from obvious and evident truths that are animating a lot of the discussion.
Maggie Ty. And.
Hi, sorry. One sec. I'm gonna be uncharacteristically quiet because I'm sorry, you guys, I'm really not feeling well. So I just mostly don't want to miss the discussion, but you don't need to call on me. I'm just like sitting here absorbing.
Sorry, get better, please.
Thanks.
Andrew, Ashley?
We'll add some more on later, not yet though.
Yeah, for me, I'll just quickly say it's a challenging time for public education. I'm a big believer in public education. And I want public education to survive through this and come out stronger on the other side. It is a huge part of America and the success of students in America. I was in a public school as an immigrant from India in South Dakota, and allowed me a great deal of success and allowed my kids a great deal of success. So I want public education. I want our teachers, I want our schools to come out of this stronger. And as has been suggested earlier, this is a really trying time for us. And people will use the situation we're in to just destroy or save public education. And sometimes it'll be hard to tell which is which. And that's kind of what we're fighting through. And each district will do it in its own way. But it's important for us as a board to also look at what other districts are doing as we work our way through this, where we're not coming up with things in isolation. We're looking to experts. We're looking to see what's working, what is not working, and hoping to chart a good course for Mercer Island. So, sorry, any other questions?
I was gonna bring up a question on, talking about the budget, ways to get potentially more revenue coming towards the district. The option of having an open enrollment with other districts, and it could be specifically targeted towards a particular grade levels. It could be more customized if it needed to be, but do you think, what's the opinion of the board on looking at that as an option for getting more revenue for our district?
Well, you won't get a board opinion, you get individual opinions right now. I think it's something we've looked at. We've looked at it in the past. 2007, we did open enrollment. It's something, it's very, very compelling, right? You open up enrollment, you go out, you in fact sell your school to your surrounding neighborhoods, right? Or surrounding communities or surrounding school districts. You have to talk about what makes your school different and valuable and why it should be a student choice to come to your school, right? That's your school district. That's one mechanism of really going out with open enrollment. It's a capitalism, right? It's the ultimate play because you're doing a lot of marketing, you're selling yourself, you're talking about what's great about your district. And, we're down about 600 students. So if we could get 600 students in, and Andy, as you mentioned, targeting elementary school grades, that would be great. That would get us back to kind of, near our peaks thereabouts, right? Or recent peaks, not the 5,400 we were a long time ago. Yeah, it feels very compelling. I think, now from a marketing standpoint, those are the opportunities. I think our strengths are we're a great school district, fantastically run, great buildings, lots of a community that loves schools. Great set of strengths to put. What are the weaknesses around it? I think the big weakness is everyone is facing this problem. If you look at Seattle's down in students, Bellevue's down in students. All our neighboring districts are down in students. So what happens then? Everyone has open enrollment. And everyone is doing a marketing play in each other's districts. And so now you've wandered into school choice is what you wandered into. And then the next option is vouchers and all this other type of stuff that comes down, right? So where is that going? The other one is, so we're 600 students down. How many students can we realistically get? During the last set of bonds we had done, I mean, I think we had looked at how many open enrollment students we had generated, around 100 or 200 students that had been generated. Nowhere near our budget gap that we really got for open enrollment to solve. So that's another challenge. And then the final part we look at is, well, what does the community feel about this? How does the community go along with this? If anybody's followed some of the other bonds and levies that we've tried to pass, the only reason we really know these open enrollment numbers is because there were complaints from the community. The community votes and pays for taxes. And when people are utilizing services and the community is paying for those taxes, but the people utilizing those services aren't paying for the taxes, that becomes problematic. We've also got some real structural issues. Our levy right now is set up assuming, kind of a current enrollment that is going on, what we've got now, about 4,000 students. So if we would actually get a bigger levy out of this, we brought in 600 students, they're talking about almost $2 million extra that our levy would have to generate, which is above our capacity of our current levy. So we'd have to go out for a vote to the public to be able to actually get more levy money to satisfy open enrollment. So there's a bunch of structural issues around open enrollment that we'd have to overcome. So we can look at all that, and other cities will do the same. And it is an arms race at that point, right? And it's not clear that that's a great arms race to be in. If we're outselling our school district, we could be outselling the ability for people to buy a home on the island and move to the island and utilize our school district. But the standard problem that is happening right now, as Bellevue and Seattle and Mercer Island have shown, as Dan had highlighted, three big issues. One is just the birth rate has dramatically declined, so kids everywhere are gone. The housing prices in the area are incredibly high in general, so hard for people to move into here. I feel like that politician forgot the third one. So that's what I am right now. But there is a decent third one.
Can I add a little bit?
Work from home, particularly with tech companies, I think we've seen greater mobility in our labor market relative to other metropolitan areas.
So what I think you're looking at is, what kind of things is the board and our finance team doing in order to, make these budget decisions? And I think we do have a board position with regards to open enrollment. We talked about it last year. And I know that the finance team went in deep, much deeper than we do, but they advise us, and that it wouldn't bring in the savings that we would need in order to justify doing it. So it's kind of a non-starter, at least at this point in time. And I thought it was successful when we did it last time. But financially, I don't know if it was successful. I think having kids from other areas is a good thing. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but it didn't bring in, when we analyzed the situation, it didn't bring in the funds that would make a difference. We also, so what I think it's fair to say that any idea that people have is researched, and if it's going to help the bottom line, it's considered. If we looked at, I'm not starting rumors. One of the things that we looked at is, as elementary enrollment declines, do we close one of the elementary schools? We looked into that. It doesn't provide the savings that would justify moving everyone around and all those other things. And so, that was, I don't want to say permanently taken off the table, but certainly not helpful in what we're doing right now. So So we're looking at all those things. If anyone has any unique ideas, by all means, bring them forward. Our finance team is amazing. As you said, I think that we're getting really, really transparent and complete answers to all of these things, and we're looking at them. I know the high school, in their new curriculum, they're looking to lump everything as much as they can in CTE because of the increased funding. It's things like that. It's, was another specific thing I was gonna say, but my point is we want to and are open to looking into every suggestion that might help us. You know, we were hoping, we knew this enrollment drop was coming. We were hoping that it would, we'd be able to transition through natural attrition. And then with COVID and kind of diving us off the cliff, that became impossible. And so, no, you know, but one thing that I know that, you know, used to be kind of on the table and isn't, and I think it's a good thing personally, is that we're not talking about reducing salaries. We have to reduce people because, like I said, we're funded based on student, but no one's suggesting, at least not that I've heard of, and I wouldn't support it, of lowering salaries. We need to right size our schools so that we can pay everyone as much as we can, and that we can provide our students the services that they deserve and need. So we're always looking at everything. If you have anything else for us to look at, feel free to contact any one of us, and I can promise you that it will be investigated.
Can I just do a quick follow-up? So I wasn't suggesting that like the one thing that you could do, but I'm thinking of, it's like a, you know, buffet of possible things. And maybe it would mitigate it a little bit, but it's not gonna solve it, but just,
Right, and no, I mean, that's fair. It can be a combination of things, and I think it needs to be a combination of things, but when we're looking at those things that like declining, open enrollment and closing the school, those would have big impacts. So you want to make sure that they have a big impact on the budget as well. I mean, at least that would be my opinion.
So we've addressed this and talked about it as a financial decision. I'm also curious about your feelings on increasing diversity amongst our student body on Mercer Island and how you think about that as one of the reasons why you might want to open enrollment on, and just the realization that we can talk about taxes and that there are people out there that resent paying taxes for people that don't live here on the island. I just want to remind everyone that students who come in bring funds with them. So that's not a total loss. That's not a great way to look at it if you're just looking at it from that tax sense to me, but that's just a comment on it. So if you could just address a little bit about diversity and
I think
how open enrollment might have an effect on that.
I think the diversity issue is an interesting one, and one that's also considered. I think open enrollment has the other, I was thinking about the third item, has the other thing. As many students from Mercer Island could go to other districts for a more diverse education. So if I wanted to send my kids to Seattle, and if I was concerned about diversity, that would be a greater opportunity, right? So that's the other possibility, as opposed to thinking more diverse students will come here. There's a big asymmetry with diversity as well. If you have the means, you can go somewhere because open enrollment doesn't come with transportation. So an economic diversity into Mercer Island, it has a lot of structural problems with that happening. Maybe that gets better with light rail working, but not in the foreseeable future right now. But I think we run the greater risk of Mercer Island students leaving for other districts for the same values.
David, I know I said I wasn't going to say much, but I just want to chime in to say the last time we discussed this, I hadn't been aware that if we do open enrollment for a period, and Fred or someone correct me if I'm wrong, but any student who comes into the district, we're then responsible for educating every other child in their family. So just to be aware of that it's like a long-term commitment to those families. It's not just a thing where we can kind of like turn the spigot on and off. I can't see Fred to see if you're nodding on the Zoom. But that was my understanding of it. Also that we can't, cherry pick you know, the easy kids to just come in and bring their friends with them, we might end up with some very high need kids that need a lot of kind of extra support. And so you just have to factor in that possibility when you're thinking about, is this really going to be a help to the district financially, as well as like the human aspect of it, that yes, it would be great to have more kids be able to get a Mercer Island quality education, and it would be great to have more diversity in the schools and so forth. But just people have to think about that whole kind of big picture.
Under current policy and the way we structured it, when we did the open enrollment, we made a decision to accept all siblings as it goes forward. I'd have to look at the exact statute, but I believe we can change that. We have ability to change that when we go to open enroll again. So we made that choice as a district at the time. That doesn't have to continue. That was a local decision.
Okay, thanks.
Can I answer that?
But I reserve the right to look at the statute and then amend that and change something else.
Looked at it, and you are able to do what you're
Okay.
suggesting.
Well, I appreciate this conversation, the question, because sometimes are we driven by financial concern? Or are we driven by diversity concern? Those are two very different kind of philosophy. And so if we are thinking about the diversity, then I think we just need to be able to communicate that, so we don't conflate the two, and say we're pulling in for money reason, but we say we're doing diversity. And I hope that from an equity kind of perspective, if we do this, that we actually take the whole family, because it is, if we only take one and not the other, it is cherry picking, and it just sucks for the whole family to put one kid here, another kid in the school district. So if we ever get to that point, and we talk, that's kind of where my perspective is. But as we're taking more students in, and I think it'd be a great opportunity to increase the diversity of our students. I also think that on the flip side, as an institution, as an organization, we need to be very thoughtful of how we transition these students in, and make sure that we have the services to support them in a sense of, I mean, I've been here for 10 years, but it took me a long time to still learn how to communicate, kind of like how teachers communicate through the email, kind of the rhythm, like every year, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's baseball season again. So there's a rhythm of like the whole, like island life, that as if we're thinking about this parallel, we also need to really increase our support of making sure that students that we take in are successful. So that's kind of, my perspective of not only a yes or a no, but if we do, we have to do it right, so that, that we can honor, pulling these students in and making sure that they're successfully integrated into our community.
I'm super curious about how you two feel about that question.
I feel like it's a very interesting thing. Our island is a very close-knit community. And everyone on the island, by the time, if they started in kindergarten, by the time they're in 6th grade, 7th grade, everyone knows everyone. So opening enrollment would have diversity, but I would wonder if that in itself would almost cause issues with students who are on this island and students who are off island, if we're not careful about how we students introduce. It's almost like a whole nother school being added, and I can almost see issues arising, kind of as you said. So I see the point of having more diverse opinions from outside is always great, and I always think it's something that talking to students that are in college, they say, no, on Mercer Island you are in a bubble, and when you go outside, there's a real world. But if open enrollment happens and there's a lot of students and it's all at once, I think there could be issues just for the student body on how you're being represented. So I think it's a interesting idea without having done enough research on open enrollment and how that looks like. But I think it's a very tricky concept.
I agree with Andrew in some respects. I personally have met a lot of my closest friends off island, but I think in some regards, parents, they take their kids to a bubble. And I think it would be hard because there'd be I think in some respects, socially, you would see Mercer Island kids and Bellevue kids or wherever we pull from. So I think in concept, it could be really amazing. I think it would take a while to get kids integrated and to think, well, oh, they're just the same as me. They just live 15 minutes farther away. So.
And I think adding on to that, there is, rivalries, and that's part of the community from Mercer Island. And as funny as it sounds, that it's, maybe a bunch of high school students just like, oh, we need to beat Bellevue, or we need to beat these teams. I think these small interactions could have bad ideas, especially depending on how long open enrollment is. If it's just for a couple years, or 1 or 2 years, that could be a whole lot of change, and then a whole lot of change again for students. And that could be, stress for counselors, stress for administrators and students with support services. If all of a sudden their class, gets 50 new people, and then, they lose 50 people. I think it's a interesting thing, but also for students, it can be difficult for them to acclimate to more students or less students, or a rapid change, just like the transition from 5th to 6th grade is tough, and then from 8th to 9th grade is always tough. Any big change, students are here to learn, and when there's a lot of change rapidly, it can sometimes affect the main reason they're here, and that's to learn. So I think that being the priority, that could be there could be, again, a lot of positives, but there also could be a lot of hidden negatives that would have to be talked about, because again, they are here to learn.
Yes. I think we also need to be careful and thoughtful of what we mean when we say diversity. In many respects, Mercer Island is an incredibly diverse community. Over approximately 1/4 of our population is Jewish, over 1/4 is Asian. I forget how many different languages are spoken as a first language in Mercer Island homes. I think it's probably a uniquely high number for a district our size. Not to mention the number of students where a parent, their country of origin is other than the United States. So I think that before we say that, one, I would just disagree that Mercer Island is not diverse. I think that when one talks about diversity, there's many different types. There is ethnic origin, there's religious origin, there's racial, there's economic, there's so many different experiences that go into that. So again, like, apart from the questions of assimilation into the island community, if it actually helps finances, I think there's also the question of what exactly are we trying to do for accomplishing diversity, and perhaps we should be inward looking and introspective first. Are we satisfying and doing the best we can with respect to our diverse community here before we look externally?
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate everything that you said. It's great to get that perspective. You're up.
My turn. How do you as board members envision meeting the stated school board goal to attract and retain educators, in particular, special education service staff, including para-educator staff, in light of the district's current financial situation and potential reduction in force?
Yeah, I think in part, like, we need to look at all the levers that are available to us. And I think that includes looking at, not just, compensation and what that means for median compensation, but the different elements of that. What it means in terms of the pay scale. Do we have that correctly calibrated for where it should be? So, and I think, as many have alluded to, it's telling our story, why it's a unique community. I think that a school district that is proximate to a metropolitan center, that's the top in its state, with one high school, one middle school, and several elementary schools, is unique, both within our area and nationally. And I think we need to tell that story, and make it an attractive place, which I think it is. And, increasingly, I believe that well-qualified staff and teachers will want to come here.
I mean, we've talked, as we were with Fred, about lighthouse aspects of Mercer Island. What are those beacons that shine across Lake Washington about our district, and how do we view them? How do we develop them? I mean, we've got so many special things here. Our close-knit community starts kind of with that, but whether it's a band program or a radio program or arts programs or drama programs, how do we talk about that and how do we highlight those as reasons for people to move on to the island and partake into our school community? And I think same with special ed. It's got a great reputation. And it is things people can Google about and learn about, and word of mouth carries and brings people here. And, to the degree that we can talk about the great things we do for our students and how we can translate into recruiting staff. And this is why things like coaches matter to us, professional development matters to us, and being able to say that type of work is high quality and high caliber, and it's worth coming to Mercer Island, where you can become distinguished in your profession because we have got these types of supports around you. That draws students, that draws staff to our district. This is what all our tech companies are facing now. There's no tech company that has done 18,000 people layoffs bemoaning that they cannot hire the greatest engineer out there. They will sell and talk about the great things they do as a tech company, and they will pull in the great engineers into their tech companies, right? They are not afraid of layoffs, not afraid of inflation or staff cuts. I mean, we've said repeatedly, our value is to pay people what they are worth, a fair wage, and to maximize that. And, to that means we have high-performing staff, high-performing students, and all these become beacons that can attract more of both. It's that virtuous cycle.
Can I ask? Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just adding, I think beyond recruitment, I think it's more retention for me. And part of it is kind of on Fred's responsibility and operational, as we're as board members, we promote and the highest pay possible. We support the operational kind of expectations that come out from Fred. And I think part of it beyond the high pay is when I think about right sizing, do teachers and staff get the support that they need, especially in education, in the special education, right? And so I think it's very critical to identify, number of students one can serve with by yourself or with support. And so I hope that the board can hold, as we do through our operational expectation of Fred, hold administration accountable for, are they having the right structure in place to provide teachers and staff the right amount of support to be able to successfully carry out their work. I agree with David about the beacon and that people will come, but I feel like now it's more of the retention. And if we don't have a good system in place to provide our teachers with support, and when I think of support, there's layers of support. I think of hands-on support as the most primary support, and so as an individual board member, hands-on support. And once you have hands-on support, like direct service to the students, then how do you kind of move up into more of the professional development and all those? There's different layers, and so we also need to distinguish between those layers of support and be thoughtful and hopefully get more feedback from MIEA and more surveys from teachers and staff of what kind of support they need. And sometimes we just hear big, we need support, but I would like to hear specifically, do you want more time? Do you want more, co-workers to kind of help with this? Do you want more professional development? What is all those really, it matters to me. Otherwise, support is kind of a big word as well. And personally, I like to have like hands-on support before I can even think about other kind of extra support.
I wanted to ask, Deborah, you had previously mentioned that there wasn't an interest in lowering salaries. And Dan, you mentioned looking at the pay scale to see if it's correctly calibrated. So is it the board's interest if in viewing the pay scale, you discover that it's not correctly calibrated, that the pay scale is increasing?
So what I mean by pay scale is it's more than one dimension. Median salary and then sort of across the board increases is, I think, how it's at the highest level thought of. But there's a pay scale that says that each year, right, like what Mercer Island pays staff, right? So it's not just the total amount. I mean, that for the most part is pretty constant at 85 to 86%. But are we allocating in the optimal way? What are other districts doing, right? And so I think, so what I mean in terms of calibration, I'm not saying less compensation, I'm saying how at the various levels are we compensating? Is that in accordance with what other districts are doing, and why or why not?
So my perspective, and this is just me, as a fellow government employee, with a professional degree, I make substantially less than our staff here at the district. And it hurts and it's hard and it makes me resentful that it's like, okay, I'm trying to do something good here. And I have to make the choice between, you know, earning and going on vacations and having multiple homes, or do I do what I believe is, you know, I mean, it's a choice that I make. The way that I see salaries for our teachers is number one, until we start as a community and nation valuing our educators, our kids aren't wanting to go into education anymore. I think that's about the saddest thing. We're not gonna, I mean, I don't think it's anything we're gonna be able to change. The way that I look at it and what makes me sleep at night is our teachers, and now a few years ago, this wasn't the case, but now with the same amount of experience with others in government work with, who are gonna get a pension, with the same amount of education and experience, making the same amount of money. Now, 5 years ago, the answer was absolutely no. Now, I think it's much closer. And I've worked for county and state, and, you know, federal pays even more. So I get that. State pays terribly, but to me, it's that perspective. It's your government workers are making a choice to serve, and unfortunately, in our society, it means less salary than people who go into private and are able to make astronomical sums and often not work as hard. Is that right? No. Is that how our values should be? No. Is that reality? Yes. And we're just a function of it. I can promise you that as long as I'm on board, I will support every pay raise as much as we can do that is economically feasible and responsible. And as a board, we have a responsibility to make sure that we make fiscal decisions that puts our students first. And number one on that list is attract and maintain highly qualified teachers. So to me, that goes hand in hand. I'm not saying it just because you guys are here. I'm saying it's who I believe in. I think my actions have said that since we've been on board. The pay raises have gotten to the point where I think it says we value, could we value a lot more? Then we need to legislature to give us the money so that we can pass it on. But that's where, I mean, that's where the pay scale should be. So when I look at the numbers, it's government workers, you know, getting a pension, getting decent vacation time, and it's challenging. We all work really hard, but it's a decent work-life balance. And those are the things that I kind of balance as overall in terms of benefits and hard work. And I know that everyone works really hard. I think that's across the board. So I wish it could be a whole lot more. I would certainly support that. I think we all
really appreciate your answer. I just want to remind everybody that Mercer Island Education Association isn't just teachers. It is actually our classified members as well. And quite frankly, they aren't making living wages necessarily. And we just have to be careful, because it's not just teachers we're talking about here. We have a lot of members.
No, that's true.
And those people have a problem.
Right, and across the board, I agree with you, and I see all the pay scales for the different supporting roles in government as well, and they're about the same, and you're right, they're nowhere near living wages, and I think that we could be advocating with our local governments in terms of, you know, housing, and as, I mean, we've never discussed this, but as we throw it out there, There's bills in the legislature right now about affordable housing in all communities and being required to do that. And as we have to make those difficult choices, do we want to be looking at our, community members who are providing services to our community and making them a priority in terms of providing the affordable housing? So I would love to see that happen where government workers, teachers, other cities, all school staff. And I mean that when I say that, it's just a misspeak, but and government workers, our city workers of all kind, as far as I'm concerned, let's provide those opportunities for people. But like I said, we never talked about that, not a board thing. I would just love to see as we work on this housing legislation that we focus on the people who we want to be part of our community.
And I appreciate the work that's also been happening around the legislation of transportation. So that really impacts us as well, so.
I think it's also important to recognize during COVID, before COVID, we started out with an 8 to 10% fund balance. That's a board policy that we have. We were passing it, we met that. Into COVID, we didn't reduce staff. We kept on staff. We spent into fund balance dramatically. As we were coming out of COVID, we continued retaining staff and took a $2 million loan out of our capital projects levy fund so that we didn't lay staff off during one of the largest job losses in history. Right? We retained it. I think that had some great benefits to our community, which we could speak of. We had special ed kids in schools during the pandemic. We were amongst the earliest to open up our schools, when it felt safe again. So we had some great benefits for the community for that spend, but we do have to dig ourselves out of this hole. I appreciate the work that Tam had mentioned around this system has to work too. I know you might be alone in the classroom sometimes, which is why you have coaches and such to help you, but there are also other support staff in terms of parapros, in terms of custodians, in terms of the counselors, the nurses, the front office, the principals, that help the teacher succeed. So it's a system that we're trying to balance and right size, and we appreciate that as well. And then I will say also, as we think about this, in a professional job, we've had these issues about credentials. So we can talk a little bit about that because we as a community have a lot of work done in drama, in arts and liberal arts. One question that has kept coming up is where, at least in my viewpoint, is where do we stand with STEM? And how are we functioning with respect to advanced math, advanced computer science, advanced sciences? Where does that sit, especially compared to other districts? And as kids get to college, and we see kids in college in STEM fields performing against other kids and what are their backgrounds, one wonders whether we should be doing something different in our side. And so there's either you micromanage at a board level, or you ask, do we have the experiences inside the school district, inside the people doing these lessons or figuring out the curriculum or whatever is needed, that is aligned with what modern STEM is requiring. That's the question. And so that's where that discussion came up. And if you see what kids are doing right now, one litmus test, at least in my mind, is kids now are seeing, if they're into STEM, I'm not saying every kid has to do this, but if they're into STEM, kids are seeing calculus in 10th grade. And we don't typically see that right now. That's my concern. And that allows them to take linear algebra and other things later on. And many of these courses, kids are getting C's in them. But when you see it twice, it's a huge difference than when you see it the first time in college and you get an F. So it's a huge deal to have exposure to these things. And know whether you like them and to understand and appreciate the struggle. I mean, not everybody has to get an A all the time. And you've got to learn that some of these subjects are hard. And it is okay for kids to be exposed to this, and then they do well in college when exposed in high school. And so that's one example of credentials, expertise. Is it there or not? As a board member, it may be there. I don't know.
I'm kind of curious from some of what was just discussed in terms of the experience of students maybe taking rigorous courses like calculus as a 10th grader and not getting an A. Do you feel like in some of the peers that you have, you don't have to speak to yourself, but just in your dealings with students at the high school, that there's a level of comfort to be taking those upper level math classes, but being okay with not having a high grade, that's okay, or something that students are comfortable with?
I would personally say there's definitely a culture of drop down to the class until you can get an A, which sounds horrible, but me personally, I dropped down to honors math because I wanted to be able to get an A. So I think you would have to kind of build a new culture around that, because A's are so important to students. I know a lot of teachers talk about grade grubbing or whatever, and so I think it would be great if students would be able to take a math course and not get an A and be okay because they learned. But I don't think that's the reality.
And I think that's the community, that's parents, and colleges want to see A's. If the student is deciding to go to colleges, they want to see A's. And I think a lot of students have it, they already say, well, I'm going to Mercer Island, I know it's a top school, an A here is way better than A's anywhere else. So I don't need to take these hard classes because I already know that I'm going to be successful. So I do think there is a culture that you just try to, get the best grade. And if you're not, some students won't settle with a C or lower and they'll switch down. But I also think there is students who do, and they do push themselves and they do take, AP calculus, I don't know why anyone would ever do that, but some do. They're happy with the B plus and they should be. But I think that's not the majority of students because I think the other thing too is students have other interests too that aren't only academic. And if they're taking really hard classes and have to struggle for a C, they can get an A in the class and spend time that they might like in other places too. And some kids, do math and they do double math and that's where they spend all their time. But and that's for all subjects in AP language. Some people I know would take an AP language class and then drop down the next year because it was just too much work and they'd rather put that work elsewhere. So I think it's also the student emotional health. If I can, I would like to go to Ms. Kurtenbach's question, but Dan, if you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, it seems to me a little bit premature to ask the perspective of high school students if their education has prepared them well for college when they haven't yet gone to college, right? Like, I mean, when I was a graduate of Mercer Island, I took the hardest level math that was available. And I didn't try hard because I knew I had another year to repeat the exact same course, which I did. And so I never learned how to try. And like just me personally, I mean, I'm not sure this is true for everyone. And then I got to college and realized there were kids that had taken, the same level that I sort of lazily made my way to without extending myself years in advance, and then had other courses down the path. So they were in 2 years ahead of me in calculus and were used to being challenged and knew what that experience was like. But I didn't know that when I was a junior or a senior in high school because I hadn't been exposed to other students who had different trajectories.
I kind of don't care what other people do. I want our kids to go through high school and have experiences and opportunities and figure out what they like and what they don't like. I know it sounds a little bit naive. I lived it when I went to law school. I didn't do the things that everyone said I had to do. You have to take tax, you're gonna fail the bar, and you have to take this. And I didn't do that. I did what I wanted, and then I studied for the bar, and I love law school, and I love what I'm doing. And so it makes me really sad that this is the perspective. It is the perspective. And I think rightly so, because it's what the college experience is like. I mean, it's really sad to me that if you don't have like almost basically a straight A, a 4.0, that you can't get into University of Washington. Unfortunately, that's the reality. And we have to find a better way to balance. And because like not one thing in the statement, and I'm not blaming anyone, we're not talking about learning. I mean, when you get an A, hopefully it means that you're learning the material and understand it. And I know that, I mean, I know that's what you guys mean, but it isn't. I mean, is it the letter grade and how much effort, or is it the material that you're learning? I mean, all teachers, I think, and parents should want their kids to earn an A, because it means they get, not because it's going to get them somewhere, but the material is. I know that's like naive and like blah, 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 but I don't know, maybe I would love to see us come up with creative ways that we can. I mean, I love what the middle school's doing with standards-based grading. I think it's ideal. I would love to see the high school do that. I know it would never happen, or at least not in the culture that we have with grades and college entrance. But for me, when my kid is struggling, or I see, other kids struggling, it's the struggling to learn. It's rarely the struggle of, if they're learning and feeling good about it. Yeah, I mean, the goal is always an A, but what I think lowers self-esteem and self-confidence is the struggling and not understanding. So to me, that's the focus. That's what I hope that we can all focus on, and stop. Like, kids have years to figure out what career path they want to go down. If they don't take calculus in high school, they still can be a mathematician or engineer. And I wish people would just kind of back off and let them enjoy their high school experience. And then so they go to community college, which is great, or they take entry-level classes, which is great. And just let's let them be kids a little bit.
Thank you. I want to thank the two of you for the honest and forthright answer you gave us. That's really brave, and I appreciate that you did that. So I just want to say,
Maggie Tucker, would you like to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think that thinking a lot about like the grade aspect, or the, oh, I'm getting polished. It takes us down like a kind of rat hole that we like never come out of, like whenever this topic comes up, because everyone's got their own perspective, and the perspective of their own family members who maybe love math or hate math, or fear math or whatever. And I guess my goal is for the district to offer as wide a variety as possible of STEM classes, along with other types of classes that meet the needs of the student population. And so like, I would like for our students to be able to take math at the high school at a level that's appropriate for them, that they're comfortable doing. And for some kids, math is really fun. For some kids, getting like as far down the math pathway as possible is something that is genuinely like internally generated. They really want to do it. I don't want those kids to have to go do it at college. I don't want them to have to do it online. It would be wonderful if we could teach those classes at the high school. On the flip side of that, we have to have the kids actually sign up for the classes when we offer them, right? Like we can't, especially with the current economic situation, like we can't sustain classes if only like a handful of kids sign up for them. And then of course we have to think about the whole system, like how are the kids getting to this point? And I think that what the middle school's done with the revision of their curriculum has been fantastic that way, in that there's like multiple on-ramps and off-ramps for changing your math level as you kind of progress through the system. So I love that. I hope to see more of that just throughout kind of the whole system, below that and above that. I really like that approach. So that's kind of my 2 cents as a person, as a parent of a child who genuinely loved math and like wanted to learn more math than what was easily available to him at the high school, but also as a person who like did not enjoy math at the upper high school level and had to take calculus for biology at the U.
We've got about 5 minutes left. So any And then at 6 o'clock, we're gonna take a 15-minute break, and then at 6 o'clock, we'll start with the Skills Foundation. So love to give you the floor for anything last minute you have.
We have two more questions that I'd love to be able to just slip in and maybe get a response from at another time. If you're so inclined, that would be terrific. Trina?
So in the face of the potential reduction in force, what is your vision for also continuing our vision, district vision, mission, and values that make, as you say, our district so special? Second part of that is how do you also envision the district maintaining and even in some cases lowering class sizes to like the pre-pandemic, considering we have some elementary classes with 28 students?
Yeah, I mean, I think the second one that we, I guess there's a disagreement. I don't think it's been foreclosed in terms of when it comes to particularly elementary schools, what the best route forward is to make sure that with demographic change and enrollment reductions, that we're able to get class sizes that, you know, are the most appropriate for each school. I mean, when you have, I mean, that's part of, I mean, it's not hiding the ball. I mean, that's one of, when Bellevue has done the analysis and other school districts, part of it is what's the most efficient way in which to fill up classes so you're able to sort of get, and it's a very narrow range, right? Like it's not too few students because that's inefficient and it's making it too many students in other arenas, right? And how are you able to staff and to right size both like schools as well as staff in a way that makes the most sense? And I think that analysis is incredibly complex. It's one of the reasons that we, as an initial starting point, we'll hear from 2 demographers at the next board meeting next week to begin those considerations. Because but yes, as you've suggested, it is not easy. It's the reason we are looking at all tools available and want to have the best information and have a thoughtful and deliberate process as we move forward.
I'll add in as an individual board member and as an educator. So as a board member, I don't think we approve of your contracts, right? When the union and the administration make an agreement, we don't get in the weeds of like, what are the numbers? You know, we make the final kind of decision at the very end. So kind of the argument back and forth like that, it is hard to say as a board, kind of like a number that we are, but like Dan said that, you know, we trust the administration is working with you all to figure out the best number that is for whether, because it's different from from the elementary to middle school to high school. But I would say as personally, I will put it out there, if the best way to support teachers, to support our students is to support our teachers. And I think if any time that beyond the compensation is really the class size, it's really, and besides looking at best practice, I think we should also listen to kind of, because post-COVID, our students are dealing with multiple needs. Before we might be able to serve 25, but now we're serving, you know, 25 with like 10 times more needs. And so I think those things that we should, as administration, as a board, take in consideration of best practices might change post-COVID, right? And so how, and so we trust this process between administration and you all to kind of talk through of the needs of our students, to kind of let us know what is manageable, because I know that when I have a class size, my dean put in more students in my class size, I don't like it. I have a good number. If I'm teaching research methods, 15 is good for me. When it's like 20, I have to read 20 times 25 pages, like every 3 weeks, right? It's a lot of work. So, but balancing best practice with current reality of more high needs in our students, and also asking a lot from our teachers to incorporating all these new initiatives that we're putting in, like UDL, and also like how we incorporate, you know, DEI immersed into all. And so all those takes a lot of kind of the way that we're going to do school, just not only right sizing the structure, but right sizing everything. I think it is an exciting opportunity for you all to have an impact and to let Fred and administration know. And I think as a whole, the board has been very supportive of what come before us.
If others of you have comments on that question, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Maybe you could send an email to me or any of the members here, and I'll pass it along. And they'll do the same. We do have one last question. I just want to slip it in. And again, if what you want to do is respond later, that would be
Maybe
terrific.
we'll have 1 or 2 board members respond, but please go ahead.
So I'll take the final question. From things that have been said in the recent school board meetings, our members do feel that some of you don't understand or respect the work we do for the students and the district. As professional educators, we would like to provide you the opportunity now to ask us about our day-to-day workload and supplemental contract work, or by email, as Sally had mentioned. Our members would also like to encourage you to spend time with us in our workspaces, be it at schools, offices, classrooms, or buses, so that you can be better informed as to the scope and sequence of the work that we do every day for Mercer Island School District.
Yeah, real quickly, I'll say one of the things that I alluded to earlier, but what makes Mercer Island a unique district is a handful of elementary schools, 1 middle school, 1 high school. And what that means is I think we have greater visibility into the schools on an individual level than most directors and larger school districts. I mean, each school, for the directors, we have a concrete sense of what's happening in that school, whether it's from site visits that we do annually, to having individual board members for each school pack. But yes, if there's any particular, practices or aspects of the day that you feel is not adequately, we're not adequately informed about, or that we may not get a full picture of, either at board member, meetings or at, site visits, then of course, we would always like to hear that more information to that.
Can I just chime in to say that when I first joined the board, I can't remember what the thing was, but I was kind of curious about something, and I was like, oh, I wonder if I can go visit, this class or something and see it in action. And I was actively discouraged by our then superintendent, who was like, oh, that's really not appropriate. The board visits as a group, these 3 visits a year, and that's it. So unless you're invited specifically to something or are attending because it's like your own child, or it's like a football game or whatever, like we really discourage that. So that's maybe something for the board to chat about, like with our current superintendent, because it's certainly a reason that I myself I do not go into schools unless I'm there for my own kid or in an official board capacity. So perhaps that philosophy has changed.
Andrew, Asha, any final words? I'll give you the floor for the final words.
I would like to go to Ms. Kernbach's question about how to retain teachers, because I really think it will go perfect with kind of just what I wanted to say, especially with special education. I feel like hopefully new staff and retaining teachers, you guys feel that us as students, we do learn and we look up to you. I have so many students who have gone to me and said, I'm a girl in STEM because of Miss Yoder being an absolute boss, or I had a friend say, Miss Hayes is just the best math teacher I've ever had. I get the way she does everything. She works at such an awesome pace. And talking about special ed, just at our high school with our best buddies and our unified sports, I hope teachers feel like they're supported by students in the halls as well. When we have our unified football games, we have radio and band supporting other students. I hope teachers feel that that is a community, and it's not just the teacher that's teaching students, but students are teaching students. In all of your classes, you guys help with students, collaborating with students, an important life lesson. And by doing that, hopefully you guys feel that you're not in it alone, and students are able to help you. And it's a collaboration with all of us, and we can all learn from each other. So I was thinking about that question, and I would really hope that you guys feel that you're here and that the work you do is meaningful, and that students are able to talk to you and feel safe with you, because a lot of students say, this is my favorite teacher. I spend my lunch in their classroom, and they're the reason I keep taking challenging classes. I keep pushing myself. So I appreciate the work that you guys do and when it comes to attracting and retaining new staffs, I think this school district is special in the fact the relationship that the staff and students can have.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I just want to echo what Andrew said, because I think retaining staff is so important when building a community on Mercer Island. Because when kids sign up for classes, they hear from older kids, and they're not just taking econ, they're taking econ with Stafford. They're not just taking psych, they're taking psych with the psych teacher, and I think that's like so important. So I think retaining staff and like, if I have much of the same teachers as my sister who was 5 years older than me. And we're able to all talk about and bond. And so I think retaining staff, you're not just taking the course, you're spending time with that teacher every single day because you wanted to spend time with that teacher.
Andrew and Asha, thinking about student voice and the work that you've done this year with superintendent student advisory, they're gonna have a linkage with the board, the students are, later on in the spring. But it makes me think, and Sally, you and I can talk about getting those students with your exec board and having a linkage there too.
That would be
Because they've got some
fabulous.
great, they're doing
Love
some
that.
awesome work with it, so we
Yeah.
can talk about that, but I was just thinking about the work you've done with the students.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to say anything else to students other than thank you very much for attending. We had a very enjoyable time, and I'm very appreciative of the candid feedback. Please do send us email. Please do present at the board, and please continue watching. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All invited to my platform whenever you want.
Thank you.
And you have people on the web too?
You know, they say they're gonna come and they're not here. It's really hard, for the board because all of them have kids. It's a Thursday night at dinner time. We used to do this years ago, right after our board meeting in the morning on Thursdays, but I know a lot of you have jobs, so that probably does, I don't know that there's a great time. Yeah, we have Shannon Stoke, who hopefully is watching. She's on our board. We were supposed to have 5 or 6, but.
No worries. Let's bring this meeting back out from recess and continue with our linkage with the Wish Island Schools Foundation. And we will start with introductions. I think we might know everybody here, but we will do that anyway. I'm David D'Souza. I've got 3 kids who've gone through the school district, and this is my 8th year on the board.
Dan Glowitz, I have a 7th grader and a 5th grader, and this is my 2nd year.
Deborah Lurie, 5th year on the board, and I have an 11th grader.
Camden, I have a 5th grader, an 8th grader, and a 10th grader.
Andrew Houston, I'm a senior school board rep, and I'm in 12th grade.
I'm Asha Warner, I'm the junior student school board rep, and I'm in 11th grade.
Hey, all, I'm Maggie Ty Tucker, and this is my 3rd year on the school board, and I have 2 kids who graduated last year, and I've got 1 who is in 4th grade at Island Park.
And then also with us, we've got
Reverend Umnall, superintendent, in my 14th year in our school district, first in this position.
and Matt.
Matt Sullivan, Executive Director of Finance and Operations, 6th month.
Ian.
Ian Henry, Communications. Class of 91.
Oh, I should add, I have 2 high school graduates and 1 in its junior year from Mercer.
Andrew Johnson, I'm the director for the district, and I've been here for 12 years.
And I'm Bridget Olson, and I have 2 kids who've gone through Mercer Island High School, and 1 is still in college.
She's our development director.
Yes.
Manager. And I'm Tammy Shoup, and I have twins who are juniors in college now, but went through, Sunnybeam all the way through Lake Retirement. Grew up with David's kids and Michelle and Bridget. Yeah, known a lot of you for a long time.
So welcome to
One online.
Oh, sorry.
Board member for that.
Stand up.
Hi, Shannon Stokey. I have 2 boys in the middle school, and I'm on the board of MISF.
Welcome, Shannon. Thank you very much. We're super thrilled to be hosting you guys this evening. We love the gigantic checks with gigantic digits that you share with us each year. And this is just an opportunity for us to discuss the school foundation and how we can support each other in your fundraising efforts. We're looking forward to the breakfast again this year too, after the counselors breakfast. It's coming up on Tuesday. So please, if there's anything you'd like to share with us, you have the floor, Tammy.
Sure. Well, I will tell you how to support us for the breakfast, since you brought that up, David. If all 5 of you would like to host a table, because I know you all have different friends, we would love to have you as table captains. That would be one way that you could bring people in. We would love it. So just let me know if you'd like to do that. We'll sign you right up.
When is it?
It's the 25th of April. It's 7:30 in the morning, and we're doing it in person this year again in the gym at the high school. So we're super excited to be back live. It's gonna be a great show. We have Cliff Sharples, who is coming on my list, but we have Cliff Sharples and Hillary Benson who will be hosting it. And the program is gonna be really great. So we're excited.
Thank you. And we're excited about the pathfinders as well, too. We announced it then.
That's Ian's thing. That sounds like I just talked to him today about it. Looks like there's a lot of existing applications that are sitting out there, and hopefully new ones coming in. Just to give you guys a little bit of an update on the foundation, our fall All In for Kids campaign runs from
We give PTAs, September pretty much, and at the end of September, we launched our All In for Kids Foundation campaign. Our goal was $465,000 this year, worked with Fred on the priority funding to cover everything that was needed, and we ended up raising by December 31st, $538,600, which is just exactly where we want to be. Pretty much every year we raise, usually it's in the high fours. We've gotten back up a little bit. COVID, we dropped it just a bit. But usually we are somewhere between 525,000 and 55,000. So we are exactly where we want to be right now. In the fall, we awarded 61 grants funded by the foundation dollars. Over $70,000 went to grants, teacher grants, which was great. Our board and Bridget went into the schools to surprise the teachers and got lots of fun pictures, and they were really thrilled. We have something new this year. We've got student ambassadors. Yeah.
I'm on my list, I was gonna say. let's hear
That's
about
right.
them.
We have three. We were thinking we would just have a junior and a senior, but as we started going through the interviews, there was just no possible way that we could not take three of them. So we have Julia Harper, who is a senior, and we have Silas Berkey, who's a junior, and Nathan Wen, who's a junior, and they have been fantastic. The goal there was just to help us raise awareness of foundation programs in the high school. That was a big thing because we feel like the scholarship applications have dropped off a little. And then we were getting a lot of scholarship applications where the students were unaware of what we funded. So sometimes their whole essay would be about some sort of program, even though we gave them everything, they weren't really doing their research. And we thought, we need some awareness. We need to kind of promote that a little. So they are kind of promoting what the foundation does and funds within the high school. They're also doing a lot of social media awareness. They have been masters at volunteer recruitment and helping us. They all came and made calls during Phone-a-thon, but they recruited. We did not have enough volunteers this year, community volunteers, which is very interesting. I mean, we've just never been in that position. We did not have enough. Our board would have been calling until the end of December had we not had our ambassadors recruit their friends. And we gave them strict marching orders, make sure that these kids are okay on the phone asking for money. And they came and just finished every call. It was amazing. We were blown away, really. So that will be something new for us every year. I think we're gonna keep those students coming back because they were fantastic. So they're helping us with a lot of the volunteer stuff. They are doing some community outreach. They were just at the farmers market that happened right before Thanksgiving. They'll be at the summer farmers market and also the summer celebration. So just, community outreach and working with us. They also are intent on doing a student focus group, and we decided to push that. We were going to do it before the breakfast, but decided just this last week, we're going to move that back to right after the breakfast, and it's going to happen at the high school with Fred's participation, and Nick Wold and Erica will be there and getting it together. So we're excited about that. Want to hear the student voice. We have a Valentine's fundraiser going on right now, which has just grown and grown every year. We thought it was we started it with just cards. If you donate in honor of your teacher, we will send a card to your teacher on your behalf. And we, a couple of years ago, thought it would be fun to do a little gift for a little bit more. It's not a lot, it's $60. And just every year it's gotten bigger and bigger. This year, Bridget has really taken this on. And we're doing some beautiful candles, different scents, they're all packaged up beautifully, and getting a lot of donations for that. So for $60 or more per teacher, you get a candle sent to your teacher. It's just kind of a nice little thing in the interim while we're kind of waiting for youth and family service to have their breakfast, and we wait until after they're done and then, announce ours. So it helps us in February. The senior scholarship will open up early next week, the application. So $3,000 Penny scholarship after our executive director. We are also doing a foundation art contest. We started this in 2020. It was just a fun thing that we were going to do. And then the winner would be on the front of the breakfast program. And then school took that down. We didn't get to use it, but we used it in a lot of different ways in our marketing. There were some fantastic pieces of artwork that were submitted. And so we're doing it again this year. Our theme is Spring for Schools. So, we're gonna see what we get. And again, the Breakfast of Champions is gonna be Tuesday, April 25th in the gym. Our video, our theme this year is really kind of just reminding the community what a massive impact their dollars have. So that's kind of our theme. It's, it's not written out, but that is guiding us in all of our programming for the breakfast. Anybody have any questions about any of that? Okay, let me know if you want to detail it. Or maybe I'll just sign you up. We need them, so you guys really. Okay, so I wanted to just share some donor trends that I think are really interesting. Last fiscal year, we raised $1,108,673, and this is pretty typical of most years. 20% of our parents made up that amount, so almost that whole amount. Parents gave 90% of that total 1.1 million. So they are who we are talking to. We don't get the grants from, we got that wonderful one from Overlake last year. You guys made that happen, but we don't get the Microsoft grants and the Bowen grants and, the Swedish.
Does that include the matching?
That includes matching, yeah, that we do get a lot of matching. Yes, a ton of matching. But only 20% of parents gave. And so that's always something we are trying to look at different ways to reach them, with enrollment down. And I know that, Fred has done a lot of work with his team on, with MIEA and reaching new families. I think we are going to really think about kind of our marketing there too. We try to be as many places as we can, but we are a small staff and we are a volunteer board. And so we do our best. We're at every welcome coffee. We do a lot of marketing at the beginning of the year to the new families. We will be at the MIPA fair. I didn't really realize they had all these people there, but we will be there next year. So we are, if you guys ever have any ideas or something crops up, please let us know. We're happy to be there with a table and educate the community. We had more sponsorships than we ever have had before. During our spring, we have our our business sponsors, I should say, for the spring event, whether it's the breakfast or a virtual event. We had 16 sponsors, but those 16 brought in almost $100,000 last year. So it was huge. We had some builders, we had real estate agents. It was big. We have a whole committee now on the board just dedicated to sponsorships. We had 35 angels, which are people who give 5,000 or more. We had someone give 20, and we had a few people give 10. A lot of people give 5, and it was huge. We had about 36, I think, last year angels, which is fantastic. 75% of giving happens for us in April and May. So it's the breakfast and the month after, and this is just consistent for many years, and October, November, December. So the phone-a-thon kicks it off, and then November and December are pretty strong. And I think what helps that is time of year, tax reasons, but also that we have the priority funding list. The community can get behind that. They see exactly what's happening. We would love to have something like that. I know it's hard though. I know for the district to give us line items in the spring, a lot of it's leveraged in different ways. But that does help. So, and let's see. And then kind of the last thing I just want to say was, we have a whole community outreach committee as well. We've formed some new committees, and that's one that's going to be kind of out there in the community everywhere we can be. We partnered with, when Kitchen and Market opened, we partnered with them and had, you know, they donated, that was a fun night, they provided little snacks and drinks and we, you know, got the community to come out for that. Bridget has relaunched, we stopped it during COVID, relaunched our Dine Out program, which was really wonderful. We don't count on it for a huge source of revenue, but it's definitely a good program and a good community partnership. And so we have a couple restaurants on board for the spring. And we promote that. And we really usually, I mean, before COVID, we were getting a really good turnout for quite a few years. And, you know, other than that, I just kind of pulled the last 3 fiscal years for us. And we are right now exactly where we need to be this year, but in 2019, 20, it is a little interesting. That was, you know, schools closed in March. We raised $1,062,352, you know, it was over $1 million. The next year, we were a lot more worried about it. Schools were closed. And we brought in 1.155 or 450. So it was a little higher. And we don't know why. We had a virtual event. You know, it was hard to raise money that way, but I think that's a testament to the community telling us, you know, we're here, we're helping. And then last year we were back down a little higher than 2019-20, 108,626,226. So we were, you know, we're breaking that million. I think what we'd like to do, and we've talked about this as a board too, we really would like to present you guys with a check for $1 million at least. So that is our goal every year. But you know, we'll see how it goes, and we're doing everything we can. Yeah, I've got a really fantastic board right now. I think we've got about 21 people on our board, lots of new people, huge board recruitment last summer. And they have been fantastic. So we're in good shape, I think.
That's great.
I would love to see the breakdown of how much the students brought in during the phone-a-thon and how much adults brought.
That is real. You know, the interesting thing was though, is that, you know, we get our call sheets back. So we have call sheets and, you know, the donors on the call sheet, everything they need to know. And we got a lot of call sheets from our students that have credit cards on them. And parents won't even give those to adults a lot of times. Students are giving those credit cards. They really, I mean, they were a huge, I mean, we raised over $538,000 in the fall. They were a huge part of that. Those calls turn into dollars. And it sounds that phone sounds very antiquated. And every year people say, is there something better we can do? And you know, tell me what it is, but this works. It really works. So, yeah. Maybe we'll think about trying to figure out how to track that next year. It's a hard thing to track with paper.
Well, it's a really good skill too. I mean, it's hard to ask for money and to have, it's scary.
Yeah, I hate it. Yes. I mean, we have board members who don't love to call. They do it because they have to, but yeah, but these kids, I think they got together and there was just an energy that they had, and then it became a little competition and, you know, they were really professional and wonderful.
You can't say no, and it also teaches them the value of giving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they got
So-
pizza.
Well, yeah, they got to eat them. There was some incentive there, candy in there. A few years ago, well, before COVID, the last phone-a-thon we had a group of kids come in to help us, and we had them in the back room where they were filling out envelopes. And what the volunteers back there, which were moms of these kids, realized was not one of them knew how to address them. So we had to write it whiteboard here, which was really, I went home and asked my own kids, you know how to do that. But no, there's definitely some wonderful things that, you know, come out of this.
You have a question, but how do you think about directed giving? When I think about athletics, for instance, we have a new playing field at, you know, South Mercer playing field. And, you know, in this context, it was a booster club, but not every extracurricular activity has a booster club. The lacrosse booster club pitched in money for some improvements, you know, to make the facility more accommodating for lacrosse. Similarly, I know when it comes to the Mary Wade pool, at least historically, there's been a recurrent large sum for someone who, you know, I suspect is passionate about swimming. When I look at higher education and transformative gifts, such as the the Allen Institute, it's frequently particular programs, and in that case, computer science, that can spur additional giving, or if it, appeals to, someone's passion, I think much more consistent giving, whereas a general fund can be seen as, much more amorphous, and it just sort of, supports whatever the school is doing, but it's harder to see, and have a say, and how it's being spent, which, is a two-sided sword, right? So wondering, how you think about directed giving, if you do, if that's something that, sort of actively is thought about.
We have a lot of designated giving. As we said, like there's a family who gives to the pool pretty substantially, about $20,000, 10 to 20 every year. We have a lot of people give to special ed who might have children and special ed. We had, before radio started their booster club, we had a lot of people giving, for radio. We have, sometimes people will give just for their teacher. Teacher didn't ask for anything, but they just want to give to their classroom. So we have an earmarked, spreadsheet right now that we have been trying to spend down for, wrestling. We have some money for wrestling that hasn't been used, that was given years ago. Every year we tell them we have money for you, we use it. We work with Fred on this too. Sometimes it's been there so long, we implemented a few years ago, kind of a, if we give you a reminder and if it's under a certain amount, you've got to use it within a couple of years. If not, it's getting rolled over and we can use it for what's really needed. Larger gifts like the pool, that will sit there until, it's needed. It's a hard one, Dan. It is, because I know that, in the fall, people know what they're giving to, and that's easier. They see my child there's a new math curriculum in the elementary school, and I feel like that's why we get a lot of that giving. But in the spring is when they're giving and it's being leveraged. And, we don't always exactly know until the end where that money is going. It's harder to, I'm not opposed to designated giving, but it does restrict those funds. I don't think we as a foundation, because really our mission and vision is academics, we, providing mental health, academics, everything within the school, but I'm not opposed to it. I think it's a wonderful thing if people give to SPED and it's needed for a school. But I think you have to be careful, and I don't think we would run a campaign unless it was something that we worked on together. That was, our board was in agreement with you guys if it was a big campaign. Years ago, I've been here since I took this job, I think in 2015. And so I've been here for a while now. And back in the beginning, when I first started, there was a lot of talk about big ideas. And, what are the big ideas? If there are big ideas, maybe we could get behind that with some sort of campaign. I think it's hard because this money is just being spent, and the situation right now might not merit that. But not opposed to designated giving. If there is a real big need, we could certainly.
Yeah, I guess one sort of thought to throw out there is Destination Imagination, for instance, is a program that has very high participation in our district, with, at least as far as I'm aware, pretty much no financial support that the district provides, despite it being quite costly. I think for those teams that go to nationals, just the team participation entrance fee is like $5,000. So I'm not saying to transform the giving, but I'm at least in my view, sort of like a thought, to throw out there, sort of a drop down.
Yeah.
That's, donated into the general fund, or, one or, several large categories or other. And again, recognizing, and it's a conversation, for your team and Fred, that's a bit of a double-edged sword, but that it might spur, greater donations and more, particularly if it targets those families that have participated in something such as Destination Imagination and sees the benefit and would like to know that their money is going towards supporting that program that isn't otherwise supported within the district financially.
I like that idea. we just had someone, a student from the robotics club who reached out to us, and they reached out to us before. We have given money to them before. They didn't reach out during the grant process in the fall, but we didn't use all of our money for, you know, all schools, mostly the elementary. Some of them came in, you know, with less needed. And so we had some money left over, but what I told them is, you know, our grant application is on our website, and if there's something that somebody would really like, that's a perfect way. Get on our website, fill out the grant application, it comes to us, and we can talk about this as a board. You know, I mean, definitely that's a way to do it. And we haven't promoted that because, you know, I mean, it's a bigger conversation, definitely. I think the district depends on us for X number of dollars, you know, in the spring, and so it would have to be a bigger conversation. But I've always liked the idea of a big, or, you know, just a big idea, just something like that where, you know, that's, I don't know how many kids are involved in that, but we have actually, the foundation has funded things for Destination Imagination before. We have,
You annually spend between 3,000 and 5,000 on the coordinators
Yeah.
to pay for the coordination of
Yeah.
it, but that's where it is. From the district fund, like basic ed, you're right, we have not spent the money there. And that 3,000 to 5,000 compared to what it does cost to participate in something like that. You know, and we make choices too. We try to talk to families up front that, you know, you don't have to go to globals, but if you want to go, this is kind of that for state versus regionals, but.
Yeah, going off on what Dan was saying, I totally understand the challenge of, you know, because I do a lot of fundraising in other places where you want unrestricted gift, right? And you allow the district to really move forward with their strategies, such as strategic planning. And as a board, we support all that through all of our work, right? And then part of it is like when we target, you know, specific gifts, right? Does it really, does that kind of drive certain areas to grow more, you know? But this is kind of where the tension for me in this is, so I know that, let's say, the ethnic curriculum, right now, there's a lot of interest in pushing those kind of forward. I know there's no funding for it. I know that we talk about Asian parents. I know that, you know, for people, they don't like to give to this big pot because, you know, a lot of them thinks that, hey, our current system may not totally reflect my reality and my experience, right? And so then giving the gift to, let's say, really that big idea, fully fund and make big this, let's say the ethnic, you know, and this is just an example, but I think it's a real example right now. If we put it in there and we're able to hire, you know, coaches, we're able to hire teachers, all these things. So I can totally see people put their money behind that for a group of parents who have never given before, you know, versus into this pot. So that's kind of where the challenge where when you're talking about this, Dan, where I see and like how should we let donors drive the direction of the district, right? Or, but then the reality is people give where they think their money is gonna go towards something that reflects their kids, you know, in these activities. And so then what is, the question maybe not one way or the other, but how do we kind of incorporate all that and still making sure that's moving forward the district strategy, the larger district strategy, but then maybe utilize this opportunity for people with special interest to be able to put out, you know, and we talked about this already, about certain communities that they might not give into big pot, but they will give in very specific.
I think there are a lot of foundations who, I mean, we're different than a lot of foundations. Our school district is a little different than a lot of the foundations in King County. We've got the executive directors of all these foundations. We're in constant contact and talking about different programs and things. You know, there are things that we don't, you know, are free and reduced, like, you know, we just don't have, we're not getting the grants, we're not getting the things. They have a lot of programs just because of need, their family need that we don't have, but they are able to do campaigns around that kind of stuff. We just don't have that at that level, so we haven't done anything like that. But I think that if something was there's something that needs to be funded. It could be a separate campaign. And I have always felt, I was over at the Boys and Girls Club for 4 years doing fundraising and also at the King County level doing major gift fundraising for King County, people want to know where their money is going, or, if it's a capital, they know that building's gonna be built, my kids can use it. If it's a program, if it's, curriculum, whatever it is. And I do, like you said, Dan, a drop down. I mean, I would love to have, I almost feel like maybe that is, I've thought about this before during the spring. Instead of saying we're just raising money and it's, a lot of it's going to the same places as the fall. Instead, maybe saying, we've got these 3 different things we're raising money for, and really kind of digging in a little bit so people can choose. And let's just try to fund as much of all of it as we can. Maybe it's an elementary something, it's a middle school something, or maybe it's even a bigger thing than that. Maybe it's a district-wide. But I do think that when you give people choices, give here, give here, give here, or, maybe January, February, this is what we're raising for right now. March, April, May, this is what we're raising for. And then June is the end of the year and we, maybe we haven't raised as much, and that's kind of the end of the fiscal year. And, we're willing to try anything, honestly. I mean, we really are. I think spring is difficult. During Bridge the Gap back in 2018 was that? 20 or 15, when was that? 2018, I think, right?
The first one, the
Yeah,
Bridge the Gap?
was that
The
2015?
2009,
The first one, yeah.
was the very first one.
That was the first
and that was second.
That was the
that was Bridging the Gap.
2008.
And it went through about 2018.
Yes, so there were kind of a couple different pushes on that Bridge the Gap, and then we took it away altogether. But, at that, I mean, we kind of are in that situation now, right? We need to bridge the gap. And so, we're open to doing whatever. I lost my train of thought on that when I was trying to remember the year.
Tammy.
But
Hi, sorry, Maggie Ty. I think everyone's dead on when they say people like to know where their money's going, and people like to give to specific things. If you look at the band fundraising last year, like raising money for new uniforms, in addition to their regular annual fundraising, I mean, people ponied up for that because they were like, well, we don't want our kids in old uniforms that are falling apart. Like that's something very tangible, So I do agree with that. And I also like the idea of, do you remember in the kind of 80s and 90s, there were a lot of international charities that raised funds, and they were like, $5 will pay for, clean water for like this family for a month, but $25 will send this kid to school with books, I mean, that kind of thing, like your $100 will get this, like $250 will pay for blank, like, even if that's not where the money exactly goes, but it gives people a sense of the scale of things. The other thing that I was going to suggest is if you take a look at how at how the district's social media has changed over the last year, we're doing such a better job now of Ian is doing such a great job now of communicating what the district is doing, like what the wins are, what the cool things are that are going on behind the scenes, right? Like everyone on the island cannot be in the classroom, like seeing a fun activity that a teacher's doing, right? So when I look at like the Mercer Island Schools Foundation Facebook page, it's totally like nailing all of the events and the kind of like, the annual get-togethers and so forth, but I'm not actually seeing that money put into use in a practical sense. And like, I know when my husband was involved with the Schools Foundation, he would be like, oh, this other school got this grant to do this cool, kabuki program. And I'm like, why isn't our kids' school doing that? But it's like for most people, it's just invisible. It's like they know the Schools Foundation is funding important stuff, but it's just kind of in the background. So I would love to see, and some of that might have to involve coordinating, obviously, like with Ian or with the district, because it's stuff happening, in the schools. But that I feel like would maybe help make it a little more compelling to people. The other thing is, give people something to brag with. Like everybody's now got all these signs in their yard. My kid is like on the drill team. My kid is on the football team, whatever. Like, why not like I supported the Schools Foundation, I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. Our social media is a challenge. We have 3 people on staff. We don't have a ton of followers. We try, I wish it were better. And maybe we talk about, hiring somebody. We had a student doing it a couple of years ago for us for a little bit, then she went to college. That's a tough one for us. Because we're really lean and mean for what we raise. We are really lean and mean. Bellevue has, they raise a little bit more than us, and they've got about 12 people on staff. And we've got Bridget, who's like 30 hours, and myself and Julie, who's 10 hours a week. So it's I think a timing thing, but Ian does such a fantastic job. What I should be doing is maybe throwing some ideas your way. Can you go get this video for me, because you could use it too? And that's what we can do. Yeah.
Or if the district is saying like, hey, check out our new program, and it happens to be something that the schools foundation paid for, then that could be like a dual, like win-win.
Yeah, I agree, Maggie. Yes, maybe we can do better. Yeah. And that would help. And we need more followers.
Thank you for supporting the schools. I think it's cool that the phone-a-thon I heard, a lot of radio students decided to do it and they really liked it. And it's cool having ambassadors there and having them post and having them be able to share it. So I hope everything continues going on. You can keep raising money, and it's nice to hear more about the foundation more and more, and having them support the schools, which support the students.
Oh, I just had a question. Do you guys still do the thing where you can buy tape to tape your principal to the wall and everything?
Yes, the game.
Yes, that's what we did.
I asked my parents to buy tape for me, and I know a lot of students really love
Those
it.
were very,
I think when I was in Colorado, I had a controversy on that, but we raised a lot of money. I was on the wall. At Circus McGurkus, I did the dog tank. I did pies down at Lake Ridge where kids got.
Did you do
pies
Kids
on
the
my
Pig
face. Kids the Pig was a West Mercer thing.
That was how to eat some sort of bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're back though. I think this year we can, a lot of our principals did not want to do the pancake breakfast because last year was still a little, COVID was still going around, it still is, but I think this year we'll be able to do our pancake breakfast, and that's kind of our late spring after the breakfast, and that is so fun that we can incorporate that kind of stuff. We've had the bug guy come, we've had a magician, we've had the reptile guy. There's always there has been in the past, years ago, before COVID, the promotion around, we've done Kiss the Pig, and I think one school did taping, the principal, yours.
They brought a pig and they.
I remember.
That's, we literally just had that discussion in the office a few days ago, where we were talking about the good old days when we could do that. And so I think we bring that back. I mean, who doesn't want to see their principal taped?
How much for superintendent?
That was, we definitely would love to do that. And Andrew, thank you too. I mean, both of you for doing what you do. That's so nice to have. Andrew was, as you all probably know, he was one of our wonderful hosts last year for our virtual event and did a fantastic job.
Just a blast.
Thank you for
A lot of fun.
But yes, I think we need to bring that back. The reptile guy was amazing. We have big plans. As long as the principals are on board.
Well, I'm sure they are.
I think we wanted to last year. I think, I can't quite remember, but there was a lot of people were sick last year. I don't know. It was for good reason. They said no, and that's fine.
I can remember it years ago. It's like, that's how you do it. Kiss a pig and tape someone on a wall, and that's what, stays in the mind for years and years to come.
That at the breakfast.
Kiss the pig.
No, give someone to a wall.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think anyone wants to do that.
Speak for us. We do it from the wall. I don't know. I think, it'll be fun. So just to kind of throw it back at you guys, I'd love to keep the conversation going on, you know, how we can better raise money in the spring, because I do think that that is something that we have talked about and thought about and discussed as a board. And, you know, as far back as Penny, you know, we have been talking about this, you know, if we can, if there are small campaigns that we can do, if there are things that are needed, and we can give people choices, knowing that it's all going into one pot and these things will be funded. You know, people love that. So, yeah, I would love to keep talking about it.
There's also lots of complexity, I think, as we were talking about directed giving, there are the clubs and the booster clubs and the athletics and
Yeah.
lots of other special purpose vehicles for funding as
I
well.
think a lot of the bigger clubs have gone the direction, we used to take a lot of money for drama, it was very high maintenance for us, and finally it got so big, we said, you have to start your own booster, and they did, I'm glad they did. Radio, I literally started that booster club when my daughter was there, that got started, and that was making, you know, but it's the smaller ones that don't have a venue for that money, and we're happy to do that for a time. It just becomes a lot of work when it gets to be too much and they really need to just formally start a booster club. But yeah,
and it is interesting, the 20% of parents that contribute the majority, but so many might be contributing in so many other different venues.
absolutely.
that
I would
it's,
imagine the band probably has 1 million parents who give us.
Yeah. And there's certainly with the levies and taxes too.
And there's been talk of starting like an overarching booster club at the high school that can take care of a lot of the smaller ones. I mean, in terms of administratively and all that. And I think there's a really big difference between directed giving and then also making people aware of what they're paying for.
100%.
And so, I mean, for me, if I know, like, I mean, what Maggie has said, you know, we get $25 for this, it's like, oh, okay, sign me up, yeah. Even if I was only gonna give 10.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
I think that's.
I think, you know, our goal is always to 100% participation and 20%, you know, at one point, a couple years ago, we would send out a constant contact after the breakfast, and Craig hated this so much, but we would give, you know, the schools a grade. And so if they had 70% of their, you know, or they had, you know, we would grade them and give them a grade on their constant contact. They hated it, but those were the biggest constant contacts that we ever sent out. You know, people were getting C+ or C-. Your school is not doing very well in participation. And you know, I could share at some point the responses and the money that came in because of those. But he did not like us doing that. We Penny decided, okay, we're gonna give it a break for a moment. But
Competition's good.
Competition.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a grade because I went to a private high school and I just got our like annual report and it just showed the percentages, and it wasn't like you stink class of 1989, but I looked at it and I went, ooh, we're really behind. The classes like ahead of us and the classes behind us have a much higher giving rate. What's going on? Like, why are we 50%? You know? So like, it doesn't have to be like we're not judging you. It's just, this is how it is. This is where you're at, you know?
Just, you know, and maybe the, you know, when we're looking about to, you know, to every school. You know, I don't know, just competition thing. You know, I don't know if principals would like that, I don't know, I don't know.
Very much. Thank you. That is the best.
Bye all.
Percentage of the event, not